Okay, we are recording. Shaun Keavney, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. Thanks. But that was a rote response. Am I good? He searches inside himself. Yeah, I think all things considered, I'm doing all right, really.
Yeah? Well, it's all changed for you, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I'm not really good with change as a general rule. Some people are like David Bowie, some people, or Madonna.
Sure.
I'm a little bit more Francis Rossi, I think. You know what I mean? It's like
completely.
I've been wearing these jeans for fucking 14 years now. But it's So in a sense, it's a little bit like Francis Rossi joining Kraftwerk.
Okay.
On Monday, Francis, you're joining Kraftwerk. Okay. So sell the Telecaster. So it's been a bit like that recently. But with that comes, as well as the panic, comes a visceral thrill.
Yeah. Are you like in this kind of like middle ground at the moment then? Like kind of, obviously you left Six week before last, I believe it was now. And then are you in this kind of like, you got a little bit of time to yourself before the next big things start happening?
Well, the funny thing is, Stu, is that there isn't really it's like the closest I can get, I'm all metaphors, I'm all these days, but the closest I can get to describing it is, it's like I'm building the bridge while I'm walking over the river, you know what I mean? So there isn't really anything. I know that there's something over the other side, and I know that there's deep water underneath me. So I'm sort of clattering along at the moment, trying to work out what is going to replace Six Music, for instance, in my broadcast live, So I have tentatively entered the waters of the podcast myself. And I think somebody said to me the other week, because I was going, oh, bloody hell, obviously we've all got a podcast these days. And they were like, but you have been broadcasting for 20 years. So I think you probably are all right to have a podcast. It's kind of your job. And that made me feel a bit more comfortable. You know what I mean?
I think you got your stripes, mate. I think you're all right. I think you're welcomed into the podcasting universe. I think you deserve to be here, mate.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it is a community in and of itself, the podcast community, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you found that? How long have you been doing them?
Well, I stumbled into it. Mentioned before we pressed record that we met many years ago when you come and DJ for me and Pip. And so I used to feature on Pip's monthly drunk casts, and then from that, I've got no background in doing this, but I quite like the kind of the DIY punk ethos of podcasting that, look, just record it on your phone and put it out tomorrow if you want. Like, I quite like that. And so I just fell into it. But then something that I guess it helped that I'd been on Pips, and he's pretty much the pod father. And so it was quite nice that, coming in on his coattails meant that I found myself in this little kind of community quite quickly. And it's just really nice. Like, everybody seems really friendly. Everyone kind of goes on everyone else's podcasts, and it's quite nice.
Okay. Well, I feel excited about entering into it.
Okay. And I mean, yours is quite music based as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called The Lineup, and it's very it's like a classic idea, he says, searching for the right words. Along the lines of what, who are your ultimate dinner party guests? It's the same kind of question. Mm-hmm. So essentially, I'm the festival genie. We have a guest, and I sort of create their perfect festival, 5 acts, living or dead, and then everything else in between, So it's like we go into the minutiae of what food when, where are we sleeping? Is that Beyonce in the backstage area having an arm wrestle with John Lennon? We sort of really try to flesh it out and create the world in the time we've got together. And it's going, it's good. It's a good start. It's going quite well so far.
So did that kind of come out of, because a lot of them conversations I know with me and my mates that are all kind of music nerds and stuff like that, that's the sort of thing that if we're pissed down the pub, we're curating that ultimate festival, like, who would you have on and stuff like that. Was it sort of bred out of them kind of conversations, Shaun?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's right. It's one of the things that, like you've just said, everybody talks about at a certain point in the certain arc of the evening, isn't it? Often, maybe you're in a decent pub and there's a good jukebox, and you've just heard Bootylicious come out the back of Paranoid by Black Sabbath, and you might, you might be on your third or fourth Peroni, please drink responsibly, and then it just takes one person, doesn't it, to say, have you ever seen, what's the weirdest festival lineup you've ever seen? And then off you go. So, and it's nice though, because it's just like most podcastery like this. It's just an excuse for a conversation, isn't it? That's all
Absolutely.
it is. And that's what's great about it. It's just let's let our imaginations loose. But then what I'm surprised by is the amount of emotion that's in, as you well know, it's held within music and music choices. People choose things for a reason, and you don't have to dig very deep sometimes to get, I mean, I don't want to encourage any kind of Piers Morganism. It's not like I'm trying to get somebody on my show to make them deliberately cry. But there have been tears, not just mine.
Okay. Of sadness or of joy?
Well, of both, I think. Of discovery and release, he said tentatively. But that's it. His music's so emotional, isn't it? It's so it's a bit like your sense of smell, isn't it, or whatever. It's like directly connected to some part of your memory that you haven't thought about for 40 years, and that's the beautiful thing about it. Sometimes you hear a song or you start talking about an artist, and somebody says, why do you like that Elton John and Kiki D song? And it all comes out. And that's what's beautiful about it.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot today, Shaun, and get you to pick some records. And I'm going to start, please, with track 1. And that's the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
Okay. The song that I regard as having the greatest ever intro. I think I've already come up with this, and I've absolutely forgot what it is. So
I can prompt you, Shaun.
I do remember. It's come back to me. Because now then, this is tricky, obviously.
You can have some honourable mentions, Shaun, if there's any.
Oh, thank you. That's very helpful, actually. I mean, I will say this right at the beginning. Most of mine, in fact, just about all of my references will probably be antiquated. And that's not because I don't listen to new music. Like, obviously, I was steeped in new music at 6, so I love a lot of new stuff. But then when it comes to, when people ask me questions like this, it's more often than not an old song, for whatever reason. I would say, I was thinking, everybody would expect me to choose a Led Zeppelin track. And as a massive, I play the guitar primarily, but I do love the drums as well. I've got a drum kit, and John Bonham is never far from my thoughts. That ridiculous right foot of his, and just the way that he played was just unbelievable. So an honourable mention would have to go to Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin, just for that. The way that he brings that in is just spectacular. And if you're a drummer, if you listen to it and you think, ain't that hard, it fucking is, mate.
Yeah.
It really is. You're not John Bonham. I'm sorry, you can't make it sound the same way. So there's stuff like that. You're still in the classic rock territory when you think of things like down. That's a pretty good one from Eric Clapton. Blotted his copybook many times since, but that's pretty peerless. But I'm going to choose Nutbush City Limits by Ike and Tina Turner for that, whatever the fuck it is. It's a clav or something, or some kind of, I don't know what it is. And in you go. As that counts off, you can imagine Tina's tush just going past at a cracking rate of knots. And it's just such a brilliant song, such an unbelievable introduction. And like an introduction to, it's like an introduction to hell as well, of course, because of Ike Turner and all the horrible stuff that is sort of connected to him. But what I've always loved about listening to that music is how Tina rose above. You know, she survived, and she rose above, and she surpassed everything that he ever did, and she the ultimate survivor. You know, so that's all tied up in that introduction for me.
Yeah, yeah. It's if we ever got to do, if I ever got to do a question here was, what is your favorite ever middle eight? What do you call it? River Deep Mountain High. When she just fucking wigs out, just screams. And someone once described it like it was like someone just set her on fire. Yeah. It's like, it's fucking ridiculous, yeah. Shaun, and just glorious. And it's like, yeah, Tina Turner's voice, never to be questioned, mate. Never. Oh. It's incredible.
It's funny, actually. You just bringing that, just remembering what that sounds like is making me feel a bit emotional. I don't know why, but it's just her voice, you know, and what she had to bloody, all the shite she had to put up with at that time. But to like I say, to have got through that and become what she became is just mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a beauty for me.
Yeah, yeah. Track 2, Shaun, I'm going to take you back. The first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Oh, well, I think I've dropped a bollock by already mentioning this. But so what I would say is that you probably, having racked up quite a few of these, you've probably heard mention of a band called the Beatles, you know, once or twice, you know. People of a certain age, you know, great. And the Beatles were like, this isn't my choice for this particular song, but as another honorable mention scenario, they were like oxygen in our homes, like they were in most people's homes in the 70s. So that's definitely one memory that I've got, like being around at my, just give you a quick crash course on my family. Big northern family, and my mum is one of 5, I think, and my grandma and granddad used to look after us quite a lot when mum and dad were at work, and they had a son, my uncle Martin, just 2 years before I was born. So my uncle Martin was like my brother, really. And my sons now always take the piss out of me, like, you only had one friend when you were a kid, and it was your uncle. And that's pretty accurate, actually. But we used to do everything together. You know, we used to buy records together, and we'd just sit in the front room listening to my older uncle Paul's records. And it was always the fucking Beatles. It was the Blue Album, the Red Album. It was Beatles love songs, and it was that. But then, so that was already there, like the sort of cosmic background radiation. But this song keeps coming up, and I play it all the time because to go back to what we were saying earlier, it feels like it's like a direct cable connection to being 4 years old, I think. And this, whatever must have been happening in that, whenever it came out, I must have been pretty happy, because whenever I hear this song, it just makes me feel like I'm on ecstasy. And it's Kiki D and Elton John, "Don't Go Breaking My Heart," which I think came out in '76, somewhere around there. So, you know, that's the red. In my memory, that's what it is. It's like I'm 4 years old, and that I haven't got a care in the world. Certainly haven't got a clue about the fact that in 30 or so years' time, I'll have a fucking mortgage. And everything that comes with that. I'm just living the dream. And so whenever I hear that song, I'm plugged in. I'm absolutely plugged in to deep joy. And it's fascinating to me, because my memory's fucking awful. It's terrible, 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 my memory. It's like almost like clinically poor. And so if you...
With music as well?
Well, the odd thing is that, like, people will always say about me, if you want to know what year a record came out, just ask Shaun, because he'll remember. So I've got an odd memory for things like that. But if you ask me to remember something that happened to me when I was 9 or 12 or 15, everybody else will have a forensic memory of it. And I'll be like, was I even fucking there? Was I? What, at my 18th? Was I there? I don't remember being there. You know, I'm like that. But this stuff is deeper than that. Obviously, it's right underneath all that. And so it's great. It's like, oh yeah, must have had some really good times, you know, running up and down Rosedale Drive, scuffing my knees, listening to Elton John and Kiki D. And that's what this represents.
And whereabouts was Rosedale Drive? Where did you grow up, Shaun?
Lee in Lancashire. So to give it some musical map connection, you know, Lee is kind of like, it's on a road called, off a road called the A582, the East Lancs Road. And it runs from Liverpool across to Manchester. And we were sat right sort of in the middle, you know, like near places like garlic bread, you know, Peter Kay's Wigan, Peter Kay's Bolton,
Yeah.
Stuart McConey's Wigan, Shaun Keavney's Lee. Pete Shelley came from Lee, our most favourite son and famous son. And what was funny about coming from Lee was that we were about, I think we were 14 miles from the Hacienda, right? So now, to me, that's like, I could do that. I could do that on the bus in 45 minutes. I could be there in the car in 28 minutes. I could walk it in 4 hours. But did we ever go? Did we fuck? We were so unbelievably out of any cultural loop in Lee that we created our own. We started bands. And so when everybody else was at the Hacienda taking MDMA and sort of meeting Arthur Baker in the toilets, we were playing songs called Lost Things and Blood Spike to 40 people drinking mild upstairs in pubs in Lee.
Blood Spike.
That was a good one.
Wonderful.
It was what we that's a whole nother podcast. Like the lyrics of John Harris, who was our singer, is definitely its own podcast series. You know, we had a fantastic song that was called Ferry Strike, which was about a titular ferry strike, and he took us on a journey every time. So there's more on that. We'll dig into that at a different time, I'm sure.
So a happy place to grow up, though.
It was really happy. Yeah, it was really great. And my boys, I've got 3 and I've got a little girl now as well, but my boys love going back to Lee because, I mean, the Londoners, you know, and Lee, it's a bit of a tired, down on its luck place in a lot of ways, like a lot of post-industrial towns are, but it's still got a lovely heart to it. And my colossal family are all still there within, I mean, literally, and this is no exaggeration, if you have to walk a mile to get to one of my neighbors, they're outliers. You know, it's like, fucking hell, I'm not going to our it's nearly a mile away. It took me nearly 40 minutes to you know, I mean, I might as well be living in Mars down here. So it's a great place. It was a great place to grow up. It was relatively rural, funnily enough, even though I didn't think so at the time. And lots of fields to gamble in, GAMBOL, not GAMBLE. And, you know, just all that. The funniest thing is that my eldest loves Stranger Things. And I'm like, this is apart from the fact that it's in America and all the kids are like cool and shit, this is my childhood. When I was 12, my life was like this. It was BMXs and CD radios and not the upside down bit, you know, and all that stuff.
Did you have a CB? I mean, we're the same age, Shaun, and like, so whenever I have them kind of retrospective kind of things about, you know, BMXs and grifters and things like that, CB radio was just like, there was the occasional spoiled kid at school that had one. Like, not that his dad was like worked on a truck or anything like that, just had one in his bedroom. And I remember just thinking, you know, this guy's the business. Did you have a CB radio?
No, you've called me out and you've caught me out, and I was just trying to make myself sound like one of the big kids. Actually, what I misspoke, because what I meant was walkie-talkies.
Right.
You remember that? You can still do it, can't you? Like in 1980, say 1981. So I'm 8 or 9, and you would have been as well. The by some distance most exciting thing that could happen to you would be your mum coming back from the market or something with 2 walkie-talkies, you know, like a little packet of, or you get it for Christmas. And I never forget how exciting it was to have Emma Martin at one end of the drive, round the corner of the front wall, and me at the other end where the garden is, and we were talking to each other on the walkie-talkies, even though we couldn't see each other.
Yeah.
I was like, mind blown. This is the future. This is Star Trek. I mean, what I'd have thought of fucking mobile phones, you know, then I don't know. But like that kind of shit was incredibly exciting. But you're right. I do remember there was a kid back in the late 70s whose dad had a CB radio across the road, and they had the masts. He had like a
mate.
30-foot mast.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in the kitchen once, and it was, and all you could hear was, you fucking, you done what? It wasn't Smoking the Bandit, was it?
That's what you wanted. That was the dream, wasn't it? But the lad that had one in my year, his dad had a banger racer car on the drive, like a Mini converted, all painted up. And when you went round there, if it was like you went round his for a party, at my house, it was always the pink wafers and all that sort of shit. You went round it, you always had a box of Cadbury's Animals. You know you're balling if you've got a box of Cadbury's Animals. Oh, mate. And a CB.
Oh, and you've just reminded me, there's a guy called Michael on Rosedale Drive who must have been 20 or something. I thought he was older than that. And he had, just like you're describing, he had like a red Mark II Cortina or whatever it was, but he painted like himself, almost like with a paintbrush, like yellow flames at the side of it, and he painted the bonnet black, and half the time it was on bricks, and he was always dicking about under the bonnet, and then like it was always a big affair when he actually drove off in it. Like every few months it would actually be roadworthy. But those are the days, man.
They were, and I did kind of wish that his dad was my dad, because not only did he have all the cool stuff, I think he was like the hardest dad in the street. He had a car sticker that said, "Touch of my car, I'll smash your face." And I remember just thinking, Jesus, what a cool guy this geezer is. Touching my car, I'll smash your face. Right, well, look, we're staying in the formative years for this one, Shaun. I'm going to ask you, please, to tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school, please.
Oh, okay. I've got one, but this is a specific thing. So, because I mean, again, going back to my terrible memory, you know, it's amazing how much I don't remember about school. But I think if the more, then I sit there for a minute and some memories percolate up. And one really strong one is, I don't know what you were like. It's good that we're the same age because we probably had the same obsessions. I used to love football. I haven't watched football for 30 years now, but I used to fucking love it when I was a kid. I was a Liverpool fan. And we were always playing, literally always playing football, you know, like whenever there was time, whenever there was a wall, we'd smack a ball against it and all that. And so the big treat for me was, apart from the walkie-talkies, the big treat was getting a new, what we would then call a Casey, you know, a leather football. You're getting a Casey? My mum says I can get a new Casey at the weekend. Fucking brilliant. Right, we're coming round. So it was great. And I'll never forget, like, one particular weekend, we went driving off, my mum and dad and me and our kid. We must have had to go somewhere boring. Like my mum wanted to get some wool or something, you know what I mean? It was something like that. And the kids had to be dragged along because they were too young to be left at home. And the sweetener of the deal was that I'd get a new football. And so we pulled in, there was like I don't know where we were, like some shop or other. And there was a basket full of yellow leather footballs. And for some reason, I've always had a serious proclivity of anything yellow. I always said to the eldest, look, you know, when you make your fucking YouTube millions, buy me a yellow Lamborghini. He's like, I will. So yellow, bloody yellow Casey, right, I'm having that. I think it was £4 or something. Never been as excited in my life. Got it home and took it to school and was dead excited, you know, right, we're playing with the yellow Casey at lunchtime. And it was the time, Walls Come Tumbling Down by the Style Council was out. So that, I'm guessing that must have been 85.
It was Live Aid time, wasn't it? So yeah. It would have been, yeah 85.
It was 13 I'd have been. Stephen Tintin Duffy, Kiss Me With Your Mouth or whatever it was. That was in, it felt like that was in the charts at the same time. But I've got such a powerful memory of that year, being 13, being madly in love with Alexandria Gildart and her nearly but not quite reciprocating. Story of My Life. Chain Reaction by Diana Ross, written by the Bee Gees.
Yep.
Big tune that year as well. Big tune for me, that.
Have you heard that lately?
Chain Reaction?
Yeah.
Should I revisit it?
Well, I was talking about it literally a couple of days ago, insofar as people were talking about going to watch Diana Ross at the O2, and it's like, I've never seen Diana Ross. Maybe that's a good one, a box to tick, because she's got mega amounts of great records. And I always kind of thought the Chain Reaction was a bit cheesy and it was a bit wedding kind of, DJ stuff. And I watched that documentary on the Bee Gees a little while ago, and then obviously they talked about the stuff that Barry had written, and they went in and they played Chain Reaction. And I was like, fucking hell, this is an amazing single. It's so good. But I just kind of put it in that kind of box. And I often do that. You put them in there, them like kind of classic wedding songs, like Come On Eileen. Obviously, everyone loves Dexys, but you kind of think, oh, not Come On Eileen. So when you stop and you listen to that again, you think, it's a fucking incredible record, that. Like, do you know what I mean?
I could not agree with you more. You're hitting on some very powerful. This does fit under the umbrella loosely of school anyway, because 82, in my mind, people could fact check this if they could be asked, and probably find them wrong on a lot of it. But in my mind, Come On Eileen was number one, October 82. I'm fucking sure it was, because I was just in like what we would call then junior 4. It was like my last bit of, like my middle kid is now, the last bit of little school. And just remember it coming out and knowing that it was a bit dirty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And really loving that. Like something about it's a bit dirty. Like he's trying to like get hold of this girl, isn't he? And it's all a bit mucky. And I loved, because obviously you're 10 and this is the time, Stu, and I had a scrapbook on Lady Diana. I was mad on her. Any photograph of her in the papers, I'd rip it out and stick it in my scrapbook. A little pervert. And so that, I was an early starter in that regard. And so that song, I've always, whenever I hear it, whenever it's at a wedding or anything like that, unashamedly strut to the front of the, give it to me, give me the full serotonin. And Chain Reaction is the same.
Yeah.
It's, like you say, it's a perfect fucking record. And but that's Barry, Robin and Morris, isn't it? They're just literally, as far as like precision tooled fucking songwriting is concerned, nobody does it better than that. So that was a cracker. But yeah, Walls Come Tumbling Down was just in my head so much around that time as well, because I think that it was just after the miners' strike, and I'm from Leigh in Lancashire, and some of my relatives were miners and stuff like that. And my dad has always been very socialistic, not in a kind of really didactic way, but in a sort of, because he's such a fucking lovely human being, he just doesn't like injustice and shit like that. And neither does my mum. So that was it was never a sort of political household with a large P, but it was always there, like a river running underneath everything. Was like, you got to be decent. And I think over the years, I definitely heard a few swear words around Thatcher and stuff from my family. So that ingrained in me that kind of, I see what they stand for and I don't like it. And so then when something like that record comes out by Style Council, you're like, yeah, I like the cut of your jib, mate. I agree with you. And that Public Enemy, no, number 10. It was all that kind of, yeah, fuckers. Yeah. Like this 13-year-old, that doesn't know nothing. But turns out I was right, I think. That's the way I see it anyway, but then everybody thinks they're right. But yeah, so that song, and the reason that it's connected to the Yellow Casey, just to bring it all round, is that we're there at the side of the music unit, low roof, Stu, right? Low roof. Here's the peril. We're kicking a football about. I'm singing Walls Come Tumbling Down. And I think it was Neil Dunthorne who chipped the yellow football onto the music hall roof. Never saw it again. So properly gutted. And so in a way I can't really hear that song anymore without feeling deeply upset about that.
Sure.
Loss.
I'm going to throw something in there. I think that song's the best thing Paul Weller's ever done. Big statement, I know.
I don't think you could. I couldn't really argue against it, because I think as far as that sort of soul review feel that he's got going on, he's got all the horns going on. His voice is just tip top, but the sentiment behind it and the power, and DC Lee's on it.
Oh, so good.
Well, it doesn't much better than that, does it? You know what I mean? It's got to be
completely. And I love the Jam. You know, I like a lot of what Weller's done since Style Council, but I just think that sweet spot of that track there, I just think is everything I want from a record. I think it's bang on, mate. I really do. And I think it's the best performance at Live Aid as well.
You know what? It's embarrassing to say this, but I don't even know if I've seen that. I might have to go downstairs and watch that on YouTube.
It's worth a look.
And a very quick aside, 1985, July the 13th, Live Aid, as we all know. And what were me and our homes doing on the day? We weren't sitting watching the telly, crying when the cars came on, calling Phil Collins for being in both places at once. We weren't doing any of that. We were playing snooker in the Bond Street Catholic Club all afternoon, because my nana and my granddad was the secretary there. My nana used to clean. And she said, I'm cleaning all day. If you want to just come in and play snooker all day, it'll be empty. And it was like, to us, that was like the ultimate velvet rope moment. It was like, we can play on a championship 12-foot snooker table all afternoon, drinking pop. Yes, we will do that. Not realizing that this incredible event was happening and we were missing it.
Kids don't get to play snooker like men do that at that age. I would have been with you, mate. I totally think you made the right choice there. But I would definitely suggest you go onto YouTube and watch it, because it's absolutely amazing. They were second on, I believe. I think they followed Quo, and Weller looks incredible. That he just looks brilliant. DC Lee's voice is on fire. It's well worth a watch, mate.
I'll put that on my list.
Okay. Track 4. First record you bought from a record shop, please, Shaun.
Okay. He's getting a lot of coverage, our homes. My Uncle Martin, who's only 2 years older than me, ... The only friend I ever had, according to my children. I was pretty unpopular for a while back there. And so what we would do is, I touched on a little bit earlier, is our safe space was my grandma and granddad's front room. And eventually they moved next door to my mum and dad. So we moved, and then my grandma and granddad moved next door. So we couldn't have been closer. And so all these formative years, from me being 8 or 9, all the way through to 16, a lot of nights, it would be me and our Martin in the front room at my granddad's, his mum and dad's. And my grandpa bought, like the visionary that he was. They didn't have any money at all. He used to work at David Brown's Tractors, and my nanny used to sew. She used to sew at home for next to no money, so they didn't have much cash. But my granddad bought from Plums in Lee a Bang & Olufsen turntable,
wow,
and stereo system. So it must have cost, in today's money, I guess it would have been like shelling out $1,000 or so, or 1,500 quid. You know what I mean? I would balk at doing that now. I'd be like,
yeah,
no, oh, come on, that's a big spend. And they didn't really have any money, but it was one of the best things they ever did. They didn't have a car or anything, So, but this is what he spent his money on, and we couldn't have been happier. We thought, he's never going to let us use it, but he fucking did, because he was a G. And so we just spent all our time mostly playing my Uncle Paul's record collection. He's a bit older again. He's in his early 60s now, but he was a proper 70s patchouli biker. He had a Motor Guzzi. He had a white Strat. He used to play classical. He still does play classical guitar as well. He's a very mercurial character, my Uncle Paul. In fact, all my uncles were into music. My Uncle Kenny only died in June, and he was mad into guitar, mad into the Shadows, mad into Clapton and Pink Floyd and stuff. And so it all came down, you know what I mean? And it was bloody brilliant. The more I think about it, the more those are the guys, you know, that I've got it all from, really. But me and our Martin were like, because we were more or less the same age, we were discovering the pop music of the time. And he's still got it at our arms. A little blue singles box with all the most important ones.
Yeah.
And so we get the buzz into Lee, and we go to the record show. We go to Woolworths probably, and we get like the red 7-inch of Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. I Just Called to Say I Love You. You know, Sign of the Times, the Bell Stars. You know, Shut the Fuck Up. That'll be Tesco. That. All the, you know, but the first one that I remember was buying, and it was we'd chuck in usually, but we play it on the Bang & Olufsen. It was Don't You Want Me Baby by Human League. So I think that's 1981. And the other thing I very, very strongly remember is we got it home, we put it on the turntable.
Oh, you having a laugh.
Big gouge in it. We were like, oh, shitting hell. So we then couldn't play it. We had to wait until the next Saturday to get our bus fare to go back in and change it. Kept the receipt like a good one, and we got it. But that was it. That track was important. And I'm more of a hairy. I'm quite unreconstructed when it comes to music. I just like what I like. I didn't always sit greatly at 6, I don't think, because I'm not a specialist. I'm not a completist. I'm a generalist. I just like what I like. I love guitars. I fucking love guitars. I love bands. But then again, I also am fascinated by, you know, like dance music and techno, and, you know, anything that I can't do myself, like programming drums or programming keyboards or sequencers and Daft Punk and shit like that. I just wish people would talk about that stuff more. I wish that I could spend the rest of what days I've got left just drinking red wine and watching music documentaries. It would be fine by me. That would be my way to go out. But there's not enough on how the fuck do they make that noise? Because I know you can make the guitar sound on Whole Lot of Love, because I could do it in my fucking bedroom, right? But I have no conception of how you program a Lindrum to make it sound like that, or how the keyboard on that becomes, you know, I wish that they'd do a bit more nuts and bolts on that for hoary old rockers like me, because I interviewed Barney from New Order once, and he was great, but he was like, he's so anal, isn't he? He is a manual guy. He's like, I said, how do you get the sound on Temptation or something like that? He's like, I just read the manual. He said, I would buy a new piece of kit and they wouldn't see me for 3 weeks. I just read it from start to fucking finish. And I'd just like, hey, listen to this. And that is because I'm like ADD, or I can't read to the end of an email.
Yeah.
Usually, you know, weirdly, I can sort of read books, but I can't read. I'm very bad with instructions. I just switch off. Step 1, I've gone. I don't.
I'm exactly the same.
You know what I mean? Show me a YouTube tutorial. Show me how to do it. So that's lost on me. So that goes back to the stuff like "Don't You Want Me," which was, I obviously now realise that it's pretty basic, pretty sort of electro 101, but especially when you're 9, you think, this is the fucking future, man. You know, not realizing that Kraftwerk were doing it like 10 years before or whatever. But that's such a great fucking record. And even now, it's still beautiful.
Whenever I have conversations about the greatest duet ever, is that a duet?
Oh, this is brilliant. It's a good question. Because it's a call and answer. One person, the other takes another.
You can throw the Beautiful South into that as well, and it's like, are they duets? Some of them, you know, cracking singles by the Beautiful South. I don't know, because if they are, arguably they'd be in the top 5 for me.
That's true. Just because they're not singing in unison or harmony, it's like one then the other, isn't it? Like a tag team.
I know.
Yeah, so great. And the girls on it. I just love the story about how they just found the girls in a nightclub because they look cool, and look normal, and they just end up on these #1 singles. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to ask you for your next track, Shaun, to tell me the song that soundtracked your years in Clubland.
It's funny. If anybody who knows me is listening to this, they'll be laughing now.
When I say Clubland, Shaun, like I should sort of tweak this question, because I've spoke to so many people that are, you know, in rock and indie bands and producers, and they were all kind of doing their music and not going to what, I don't want people to presume that this means shirt off, glow sticks, like raving. This can be the local indie night. This can be anything. So it's not got to be, you know, that summer in Ibiza.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good broad remit. I might change what I've said then, because well, I could answer it in a number of different ways. Like, there's one literal way I could take it, because I used to be in a cabaret band.
What were they called?
Cypress Jack.
Okay.
Terrible name. Great musicians apart from me. Leon Parr, still the greatest drummer of all time. Used to play in the band Mosque. Everybody knows about that. Tell their own story. Nick Jones on keys, just this wonderful. She's just an incredible musician. Sean McGowan on bass and vocals, and me, and we used to play some right rough spots in places like Earlstown, like a Irish pub in Earlstown. And I remember we played it once, and my mum and dad came as well to support, and it got so leery. And I'm a very oblivious person, and I'm actually quite an innocent person. I don't notice cues sometimes about when things are starting to go wrong, but my dad did, and he could tell there was some leeriness going on. And he had his fist balled with a load of pound coins in it at one point, because he thought it was going to kick off. And he was like, "It's going to fucking go, and I'm going to make sure nobody fucking gets on that stage." You know, he'd gone a bit Peter Grant. You know, so there's that kind of club that I remember, like, doing. We had to do an audition in like a labour club to get on the circuit. It was so funny. It was so Phoenix Nights, you know. So there's that version of Clubland for me, and that's always epitomised by some of the songs that we used to do. Like we used to do things like Beatles medleys and Salisbury Hill by Peter Gabriel and all this. We were a really weird cabaret band. But like, when it comes to that, that's a good way in for me is indie nights, because that what it would have been for me as well. Wednesday nights at Wigan Pier, probably between like 1989 and 1991, right in that fecund territory for Manchester. And we were just the most colossal Stone Roses fans, especially me and my mate Banksy, not that one, bass player extraordinaire of Mosque. We were colossal Stone Roses fans, and our own actually. And it was always for us, it was always fool's gold at those nights, because it was I guess that was, we didn't realise at the time, it was the closest that we would get to acid house, or going to the hacienda, or doing something exotic like going to Ibiza and taking MDMA. We wouldn't get to do that for many, many years, but we had a taste of it through that record. It was like something going on in that record. I've got no conception of, I don't understand. It was the first time I'd properly heard. I was a bit fucked off when it first came out, because I wasn't, always have been such a massive fan of Rennie's drumming. He's definitely my top 5 favorite drummers, I think, or top 10 certainly. Just love watching him, hearing him. And I was like, oh, what this fucking drum machine on top of this? This is an absolute outrage. No, I'm not having this. What's happened to Rennie? Is he all right with it? I used to get really affronted on people's behalves, you know. We're not using Rennie very much on this. But when, you know, listening again and again, it's like, fucking hell, this is hypnotic shit. This is absolutely brilliant. And that I suppose that was a bit of a gateway into that kind of world that was coming, and acid house, and obviously people like Prodigy and Chemical Brothers and all that stuff. It was all coming up around that time, wasn't it? So yeah, I would say probably would be Fool's Gold for me. And then at exactly the same time, Give It Up, Turn It Loose, from that In the Jungle Groove record, the James Brown record, which is just one of the best albums of all time. You know, but both of those together, if I'm ever DJing, I'm playing both of those. Yeah. And then you've basically got 15 minutes to go do what you fucking want as well, you know. But you don't want to go anywhere because the records are so good.
I've run an indie alternative nightclub for nearly 30 years, Shaun, and to this day, Fool's Gold will never leave it. It's my piss record. That and Loaded, sling it on. How Soon Is Now, go and have your piss.
Yeah.
And I mentioned How Soon Is Now alongside Fool's Gold. For me, two of the greatest records ever made, but both records that sound like nothing else them band's done. And I think Fool's Gold don't sound like anything else the Rosie's done, in my opinion. I don't think How Soon Is Now sounds like anything else the Smiths done. And I think both of them songs just sound like they're fucking beamed from outer space. Like, do you know what I mean?
I absolutely do. I couldn't have put it better myself. When I heard both of those records, there's no precedent for it. It's certainly in their canon, but even around, there's no precedent for it, is there? What I loved about listening to the Rosies was the visuals perfectly, for me anyway, they just perfectly married with the sound. So it was like, that's what I'm not a synesthesia kind of a guy, right? I'm fucking colorblind for a start. You know, we don't see in colors everywhere, man. You know, I don't. I can't pick a paint for the wall because I haven't got a fucking clue what color it is. But then there's something about, especially John Squire's sensibility and the way that, and then you put John Leckie in to produce, and you take these great songs and put them on a totally different level where it's utterly mind blowing. And it just sounds like Jackson Pollock fucking in your ears. It's absolutely, it is like it felt to me when I was 16, 17 anyway, like a truly psychedelic experience, you know, without having a trip, because we couldn't find anybody with drugs.
Yeah.
You know, it was the most we could get was four cans of McEwen's Export, you know, as close as we could get to heaven. But that music was, and you're right, How Soon Is Now. I saw Johnny Marr at the Electric Ballroom a few days ago. I've been lucky enough to call him a friend in recent years, and he played that, and it's just like you say, it's like, where the fuck did that come from?
Oh no, ridiculous.
Out of space.
Gonna take you home for track 6, Shaun. A favourite song from an artist from your home county, please.
Just realised that. You know, I said earlier I don't read to the end of emails. I've basically slightly misread this one because I thought.
Have you gone country?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Let me think about this.
I will let you know, Shaun, that of the 366 episodes I've done of this podcast, you're probably the 340th person that's done that. Why I don't put county in great big fuck off bold letters, I don't know. But yeah, don't feel too stressed about that, mate.
I think I can do this. I'll give you what my first answer was going to be when I misunderstood the question anyway, and then I will lead into my county. I suppose that then that's Greater Manchester though now, isn't it?
Mm.
Because it used to be Lancashire. Okay, all right, I can do this. When I thought it was country, I was going to say I've not mentioned any Beatles yet, so I was going to hurl in She's Leaving Home from the Beatles. Because when the first, I don't know what you were like when last March when it first all started to go wrong, and we started, you know, it was a bit like wartime, wasn't it? We're all gathering around our crystal sets waiting for Boris fucking Johnson to say something stupid, but you know, we were in this invidious position where we had to listen to him because of the coronavirus. But I'll never forget. My reaction to extremely stressful events now seems to be a reversion back to the Beatles. So if I'm feeling really upset about something or really scared about something, I end up under a duvet, either listening to the Beatles or reading about them, because they're like my uncles. That's the nearest I can get to it. The sort of, they're perhaps a bit older than a bit older than my dad and my uncles and stuff, but they're in that category. And that is, I think that a lot of people my age who came up on that music, that's what they represent to them, like they're like family. And I read Revolution in the Head by Ian MacDonald because I'd never read it before. That was my lockdown read. And then just went piling back into it all. Rediscovered Sergeant Pepper as one, because I always used to dismiss it and be like, and I still don't like Being for the Benefit of Mr. Fucking Kite, you know, and all that business. But there's so much immense stuff on it. It's so important. But She's Leaving Home is, I just keep coming back to that piece of music as the most, I can't believe that a human being has fucking created that.
Yeah.
Just can't believe how perfect it is. The story, obviously, it's Mike Leander, I think, who does the strings. The fact that, I mean, the perfection of the melody, the interplay, because it was John, I think, on the John and George, you can hear the slightly sardonic backing vocals that representing the parents, you know. It's just perfect. Absolutely. And it always brings me to fucking tears. It's always embarrassing when I listen to it if I'm out and about, because I will cry. So that was what I was going to say. Technically, I could probably still claim that because that's Merseyside. And we're probably about 8 miles away from Merseyside. But if we're going to go Lancashire and Greater Manchester and the greatest record to come out of there, then you could do anything. You could even do Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young because of Graham Nash. He's from fucking Salford. Interviewed him once, and the best thing about the interview with Graham Nash was that we ended up talking exhaustively about this 20 grand laser printer that he had. That is now in the Smithsonian Institute. But that's not answering the question either. I would probably say something like, just off the top of my head, I wouldn't go New Order or Joy Division myself, even though I absolutely adore those records. I'd probably do something like The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies.
God, tune.
You know what I mean? Just because it's so beautiful. And so, again, the older you get, I don't think, once I get to 60, I don't think I'm going to be able to get to the end of a record ever without bursting into fucking tears.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's weird, isn't it? It's weird that happens as you go. I was driving home. I stayed at my sister-in-law's. We was driving home, and I had a couple of drinks the night before. So I weren't super hungover, but I was just that kind of hungover enough that for some reason, even if EastEnders is on the telly in the background and even watching it, you can just get caught up in it and bawl your eyes out over something that you have no idea what the fuck's going on. But I was at that kind of level. And some radio station that I could get coming out of Norfolk was playing the charity version of Lou Reed's Perfect Day that was recorded 10 years ago or whatever, probably longer. What a beautiful song anyway. The minute it got to Gabrielle singing I'm Glad I Spent It With You, burst into tears. Like, knowing you think, like, why am I crying? Like, this is, pull yourself together, man. Like, it was ridiculous, Shaun.
I'm going just thinking about it. Once you get to Heather Small, you're in pieces. I totally agree with you.
Oh dear. Right, Shaun, last track. And this is when you can put your DJ hat back on and play tastemaker and influencer. A song that many may not know that you would like them to hear, please.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I sort of miss already. I've only been 2 weeks out of the game at Six Music, but one of the great privileges of working there was, as I said before, I'm a generalist, and it was a great thing. They have a wonderful music team though who dig out, source, and supply you with endless good bands and good acts, and some better than others, you know, for your tastes or whatever. You don't like everything, but so many great things. But we all presenters on music stations that are worth the salt tend to be encouraged to have like a record of the week or some kind of showcase for new stuff, or an old band that have got a new record out, and we were no different. But we had some great music through that. But there have been some bands coming through recently who right up my street because they're very when I'm playing the guitar myself, Stu, you know, I love that sort of. To speak of Johnny Marr, actually, and to speak of John Squire and stuff, I love that kind of arpeggiated, shimmering sound that some people get. You know, bands like the Sundays used to purvey very beautifully. And
I was very much hoping this conversation was going to mention the Sundays.
really,
I thought it might. It might.
I mean, they were the closest thing, apart from Harriet Wheeler and that incredible voice, to my old band. We used to, I guess, we used to think we sounded a bit like them, you know, but with much, but worse, and with slightly more auto-tune vocals. I think John would agree. But we loved that sound, that style. There was a time when I was a kid where in bands where it used to be termed indie jangle, indie pop. And of course, you know, and you've got all that C86 stuff and things that I'm in love with, like The Wedding Present, but that's a bit more of a dirty sound, obviously. But then you're talking about Cocteau Twins and people like that, all that beautiful music, beautiful bell-like guitars. And there's a band called Penelope Isles who do it so beautifully. But there's also a band called Bleach Lab, and they had a song called, I think it was Still Waiting for their first album to come out. But the first thing I heard of theirs was called Old Ways, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's like, it gives me hope because I'm old. I'm nearly 50 now, and nearly all the music I've talked about is old music. I don't want to be one of those old bellends that is like,
no, back in day were proper, but now it's all shite. Give me another pint of mild. X Factor, fuck off.
You know, I am a bit like that. Part of me is that. But there's another part of me that believes in the future and in hope. You know, I've got 3 fucking kids. You know, you've got to believe in the future. And these young people that are coming up give me hope, because it's like, wow, that. Sometimes I do think, well, it's done, innit? We've done everything, all the good stuff. You know, there's only 8 fucking notes, or 12 if you include all the dark ones or whatever. Surely we've got the juice out of it now. And then somebody will come along and do something that blows your doors off, and you would never have thought they could do. And that's a track I want everybody to go and listen to. Bleach Lab, Old Ways, and whatever else they come out with next, because it's just that shimmering, chiming, melodic. Her voice is just, it's dreamlike. It's what you need at times like this, when the 70-mile queues for the petrol station and you've got idiots in charge of the whole shebang. You know, you need to know that there are people out there who might save the world. Young people who might save the world for us. And so Bleach Lab, I'd say get on the end of that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's beautiful. And it was, not to take anything away from that band, but I heard it on 6 as well. And I was like, oh my God, this really echoes of Harriet Wheeler. Yeah. And I don't know what that band's doing. They've just gone to ground and no one's heard of them for however many years. And I'm just glad there's another band making music that can interest me the way that band interests me. So yeah, Bleach Lab, all over that, Shaun. Shaun, we put together a little Spotify playlist to accompany the podcast as well, so people can go and check out all of the songs that we've had a natter about today, mate. And so moving forwards into the latter half of a year that's hopefully going to finish up a little bit more connected and a little bit more joyous than maybe the last year or so has been. With that in mind, what are you looking forward to from the rest of this year personally, and what's going to be happening professionally?
Oh, thank you for asking. I have it in my. I just hope, because I'm a bit neurologically diverse. Me, I think that's a good way of describing it. There are a lot of good things about my brain, but there are a lot of things that if I had a chance to change, I would. I'd love to think that in an ideal world, I'd be stepping off the freight train of daily radio for a little while, and you know, like, I keep telling you, I'm all metaphor. Like Glastonbury has to have a fallow year, so to let the fields regrow and to let the nutrients back into the soil and all that. I'm kind of hoping that that's what's going to happen to me now. I've been broadcasting for 20 years, ridiculous but true. And I was saying this to my reflection in the mirror just yesterday. You know, you could have at least, you could go to your 80, you know, if you're lucky, you know. You could be like David Jacobs. You could have another 30 years in this game if you play your cards right, if you're lucky, touch wood. So I'm like, okay. So to answer your question, I'd love to think that I might have a tiny bit more time to spend with my family and to sit staring at walls thinking of stuff, because that's how I work best. I want to keep my lineup podcast going from strength to strength. I've got another one coming out before Christmas. Oh, he's got 2 podcasts. What a prick. Who is this prick? Called Shaun Keavney's Creative Cul-de-sac, which is basically me locked in a room going through 20 years worth of my stupid ideas, but then doing it with a guest and then doing it with the listeners. You know, you've got notebooks and iPhone notes full of ideas, haven't you? And stuff that you just write down and then you forget about. That's what it's about. It's about going into those and talking about them. And maybe, you know, I've written a sketch in 2002. I might just reenact it, you know, just so to release it from the notebook. Yeah. It's like I'm really excited about that.
That's a great idea for a podcast, Shaun.
It is. Maybe you could come on that. If you bring a few notebooks, we could return the favor and we could pod each other.
Glorious. I'd love that, mate. I'd love that.
And then the other thing is I'm just looking forward to Christmas and hoping that I don't get COVID again like I did last fucking Christmas. And so I was robbed of Christmas 2020 as so many people were. So I'm praying that this Christmas, like you just said, that everything is a little bit more like it should be. And then I can play Simply Having a Wonderful Christmas Time, which is just about my favourite Christmas song.
What a lovely place to finish. Shaun, thank you so much, mate.
Thank you. It was really a great pleasure to do that.
Cheers, mate.
Brilliant.
Right. I've just pressed stop on there.